Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show, where we explore ways to get healthy, wealthy, and wise. With a combination of guest interviews and solo episodes, I hope you will be inspired and motivated to become the best of whatever you are. I'm Elle Russ, #1 best-selling author and subject expert with over a decade of helping thousands of people across the globe. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about free guides, masterclasses, online courses, and more. Enjoy the show. All right, welcome today. This title is a little bit strange, called Appropriate Brutality, When Dominance is the Right Move. This episode came off the heels of a friend of mine who reached out to me and suggested, they were like, hey, I think you should interview so-and-so. And my response was, oh God, no. I was on that person's podcast. I would never interview them. They were a total nightmare. And then I realized that that whole experience of me being on their show is such a great example of appropriate brutality and when dominance is the right move. So I want to explain that. I want to, before I get into this really juicy example, look, kindness, empathy, collaboration, absolutely. These qualities are important. They should be the foundations of every interaction. Absolutely. But then there are these moments in life when those approaches don't work and adopting a more forceful strategy becomes the move. And when we look at the word dominance, forcefulness, or the word brutality, they really carry negative connotations, but I don't think they should. Normally, they just evoke images of aggression, fear, maybe even violence or something crazy like tyranny, right? But I think we need to take a look at them through a different lens because certain situations, these qualities, these forcefulness, brutality, dominance, they're not only appropriate, but they're critical for achieving the best outcome in that moment. That is the example I'm going to be giving you today is so juicy, it's so good, and it'll really prove to you that point. Before I get into the actual example, I just want to talk about a few ways we can look at dominance in our world. Like we could look at it historically, that would be something like world wars. That's an extreme example. But if you didn't have certain leaders being resolute, making brutal decisions, then without dominant approaches there, those outcomes could have been disastrously different, right? So in historical context, look, forceful action was necessary. And that's an extreme one, right? And then we have professional scenarios. So in the professional world, leadership, look, it requires empathy, but it's a balance of that plus assertiveness. There are moments when you as a leader have to be unyielding in order to, whether it's drive a project forward to completion, whether it's to maintain standards, maybe you're protecting your team's integrity. Either way, visionary leadership, right, that can sometimes require dominant approaches. Let's look at the personal boundaries. Okay, so on a personal level, there are times when being forceful is about protecting your actual life, maybe your body, or yourself, your mental health. So we've all experienced moments where, we've been pushed to our limits and feel like kindness and patience might have been mistaken for weakness. And, in those times, asserting ourselves firmly, sometimes brutally, it becomes a survival thing. That's a matter of self-respect and survival. It's about saying enough is enough, right? And let's just look at sort of like psychology. I always like to look at evolutionary psychology. If we look at the psychology behind sort of brutality, humans respond to strength and confidence. I always say that. So when someone takes a dominant stance, that commands respect and, here's the key, compliance. So it's not about fostering fear, right, which one may think in a negative kind of way. It's about creating a presence, I guess you would say, that others recognized as authoritative, like unwavering, right? That's about the clarity of purpose, your determination to sort of see things through. And of course, you have to have ethical considerations here, right? So you need to distinguish between appropriate brutality and just unnecessary cruelty. What's that distinguish? What are those differences? I mean, so appropriate brutality, it's measured, it's intentional, and it's often justified by the situation. Unnecessary cruelty is just reckless and destructive. It's just being an asshole. So ethical dominance, I guess you would say, involves understanding the impact of your actions, understanding that forcefulness might serve a greater good, but also not being cruel. And then before I get into my example, I'll talk about sort of a few practical applications of this in other scenarios than the one I'm about to mention. Conflict resolution. This is a big one because when negotiations or discussions, actually, I have another example on this I'll give after the first one, but when negotiations or discussions reach an impasse and a crossroads, and there's like a clear right or wrong, taking a firm, dominant stance can break that deadlock, which then what leads to a resolution? Then, of course, personal safety, right? There are certain situations, maybe your life, the safety of others are at risk. Of course, sometimes appropriate brutality might mean forcefully asserting yourself or taking some kind of action to protect you. And then in leadership, this is really critical if you're planning or wanting to be a leader or you are a leader, especially because you're usually leading people or leading a team. There's going to be moments when tough decisions are necessary. And in those moments, being clear, being firm, being unyielding, that can guide your team through challenges. That can guide your team and you to success. All right, so I'm going to give you this example. And honestly, I have never experienced something like this except for this scenario. Um, I have I have been interviewed hundreds of times. I have interviewed hundreds of people. In all of those interactions, I've never had any really just rough, this was just really rough. I have had a couple of moments where, let's say, somebody had a really bad interview, and I've had to be brutally honest and reach out and say, hey, I do not think that that interview is good. If you don't mind, I think we should re-record it because it doesn't make you look good. And I think we could do better, right? Like there's only been maybe two out of hundreds and hundreds of people I've interviewed where I've had that. That's not awkward, but a little bit because you're like asking them to spend another hour with you and you're kind of telling them that the interview sucked. But they were very appreciative of that in those two moments. They were like, oh my God, I thought the same thing. I had the same vibe. Yes, please, let's record it. Thank you. Let's re-record it. All right. So here's the scenario. I'll just use the name Janet. I don't think I've been ever interviewed, but I don't know. I'll just use the name Janet. Um, Janet is a very popular person with a broad audience. And they wanted me to come on their podcast to talk about thyroid and health. This was years ago. And I was like, great. This is a big platform. Fantastic. So I went onto their show. And this is kind of crazy. All right. First, I guess I would say if you're not familiar with how this works, when you're interviewing someone or someone's interviewing you, you get on the Zoom call or whatever software platform they want you to connect with, and usually they're not recording right away. There's like, hey, how you doing? Good. Oh, hey, do you mind if I ask you this? Or is there any questions you'd like me to ask you? Or hey, please don't swear, or whatever the thing is. So there's usually like a 30-second to minute long chat before they say, okay, ready to record. Okay, I'm going to press record. So during the nightmare happened during that like couple of minutes. And here's what happened. First of all, we get on the call. Right away, when she picked up, she's like, hi. And then she goes, hold on. And she immediately in the background is berating one of her assistants. Like, I don't even know exactly what she said. I got a gut punch. I felt like I was witnessing someone being mentally abused by their boss. And then she gets back on after chastising them and she's like, oh, these assistants, like I've gone through so many of them in the past couple of months. Like, just, it's really hard to find a good. Okay, so let's just stop right there. I wanted to be like, oh my God, no wonder you keep going through assistance. You're an asshole to them. Like, oof. Anyway, not my place, not my business. I was just like, Yeah. Okay. So then we're chatting a minute, and I don't know how this came up, but on the cover of my book, The Paleothyroid Solution, the um, subtitle is Stop Feeling Fat, Foggy, and Fatigued at the Hands of Uninformed Doctors. It's on my book. She wants to interview me about the book. She's seen the book cover. She sees it. She's seen that term, uninformed doctors. I don't know what happened, but I mentioned uninformed doctors. This is again before she starts recording. I don't know what she had asked me. When I said uninformed doctors, she flipped out. Now, I'm going to reenact exactly how she flipped out. Here's how this conversation went. She goes, "Oh my God. Oh my God. You cannot say that. You cannot say that word. I have so many endocrinologist friends. You cannot say that. Look, we can't," just like that, until I interrupted her. I go, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa." I said, "Hey, Janet, relax. It's okay. I get it. I don't have to say that term. I won't say that term. I'm a pro. Don't worry." She continued. "You just don't understand. I cannot, you can, I mean, this is, I don't know, like what you're," and she just was, it was crazy. And again, this is where I got more brutal each time. I said, "Janet, listen, I'm a pro at this. I've interviewed hundreds of people. I get what you're asking for. I will not say the term. Just press record. We're wasting time. You're going to get a great interview. Trust me, just press record." This bitch kept going. You guys, this was, then I had to escalate it another level where I literally, in this voice, I said, "Janet, seriously, enough. I am a pro at this. You're going to get a great interview. Give it a shot. Press record. I'll give you a great interview. Let's do this. I'm an expert. I got it." Finally, she did. Then here's what happened. Suddenly, after the interview, she's gushing. "Oh my God, that was so amazing. You're so smart." Like Jekyll and Hyde, a total Jekyll and Hyde. And I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, there's so much in here to wrap your head around, and I'm going to dissect it. First of all, it was extremely uncomfortable for me to be this brutal. Comfortable enough to do it. Don't think I wasn't shaken inside. I was. Let me tell you what the inner workings of my mind were happening at the time. This is what I was saying to myself. Oh, fucking no, you didn't ask me on this fucking show. I did not take the time out of my day. And then I'm going to leave and be some banished person like, oh my God, this stupid woman came on my show, wanted to bash doctors. And now I'm just left in the dust. And how dare you? Right? Like, no way. That what was going in my mind. And also, I told her the fucking truth. I am a pro at this. Like, I won't say the term if you don't want me to say the term. Like, I'm good. If you don't want me to swear on your podcast, I won't. I got it. Just give me what you want. Everyone's got their own parameters or their boundaries. She was horrible. But guess why? I won. Not only did I get a great interview on her platform, but here's the thing. Then the impression, now granted, I don't really care about what she thinks about me in this world, but then it turned out to be a good day, a good outcome. The best outcome for me, the best outcome for her, and it calmed her shit down. It worked. What if I had let her bail all over me and was like, okay. She kept coming at me. I just reenacted the conversation. At any point, I could have been like, oh, okay, well, I guess we don't, if you don't want to interview me, I guess that's okay. I could have said that. I didn't. Instead, it was like, oh, no, you're fucking interviewing me. No, you're doing it. Press record. Enough is enough. Stop being a bitch, right? Kind of vibe. She got it. Why? Because I bullied a bully back. It works. Now, it couldn't have. She might have been like, wow, you're being a bitch, so I'm hanging up. She could have. But instead, it did the opposite. My bullying her back put her in her place, made her fucking see her stupidity. She pressed record. And then at the end, she's like the happiest podcaster that ever existed because it was so great. Now, you might be like, ooh, I don't know if I could be that brutal. But then I would ask you, why not? Because there might be times when you have to. I would argue that you should be prepared for it, particularly if you want to be a leader, a coach, you want to collaborate with others, you want to get ahead in business in the corporate world. I'll tell you another, the other small example is someone who used to work for Primal Blueprint Publishing, who published my first book, The Paleothyroid Solution. Someone who used to work there, who was working on the book, um, was really adamant about me putting certain text on the inside flaps of the cover, like for the actual, cover that they were selling. They ended up not doing it. There's no flaps on my book. But anyway, long story short, I didn't like it. I thought it was verbose. I thought it was too much. I didn't want to put the text on there. And it was like back and forth. They were like, I really think you should do this. And I was like, I don't want it. And then they kept giving me the cover and the text was there. And I would say, hey, I told you I didn't want that on there. Take it off. And they wouldn't. And they argued for it. And then finally I was like, okay, now I've gone around a couple of times and now we have to escalate this. And my email, I believe, was something to the effect of, hey, regarding this, this is the end of the discussion, period. It's my book. I don't want that text in there. I told you what I wanted. The text is attached. That is the end of it. And like I probably capitalized, that is the end of it at the end of that email, something like that. Guess what? It worked. It worked. It worked. That's an example of conflict resolution to some degree, right? There wasn't necessarily a right or wrong. That was a personal preference of me having this text or not having this text on there. But it still is an example of an impasse. Then will your dominant brutality, your assertiveness, then it can change the outcome in your favor. Now, I would tell you right now, if I cowered under her being a bully to me in that, because she was being a bully, she's being a bucket. I mean, look, she had just been yelling at an assistant. So, like, she was already in a pissy mood, clearly. And then I showed up, and then she got triggered by that term and went off. She probably felt fucking stupid afterwards. I hope she did. Good. I don't care. She's probably still that person. And will she ever learn? I doubt it. Whatever. Not my business. But I would have felt really lame to this day. To this day, I would be regretting if I had just let her shove me out of there, or whatever word you want to like, shush me out of there, or whatever, right? Let her attitude that day just shut it all down and cancel me off that show and forget it. And also leave her with a bad impression of me that she created in a moment because she was just being an asshole and having a bad day. But right? No, no, no. I wasn't going to allow that to happen. My inside is, how dare you? No, no, this is not how this is going to go down. I would like you to think more often like that about certain situations than, okay, well, I guess I will just leave and run away from this because someone doesn't like me or someone's challenging me. I'll give up. I'm really fucking glad I didn't give up. First of all, she was being an asshole to me. So even if she eventually didn't accept that and never recorded the podcast and said fine and hung up on me, that's fine. I would have felt good about standing my ground. At least I said something. But it resulted in the opposite. The reason I took that shot is because it is really the case. And when someone's bullying you, if you bully them back and shut it down and it's like ridiculous and stupid, they see it, they get it. Then they end up loving you. That's what, oh my God, you're so wonderful. You're so great. Like Jekyll and Hyde, the person she was gushing about me at the end of this podcast after it was recorded was completely fucking, she was so disrespectful and shitty and fucking lame and then wasn't listening to me. I had to tell her 3 times. Don't worry, I won't say the term. My God, I had to escalate my voice. I had to escalate the tone. I had to escalate all the things. Not fun. I'm shaking. It's not like a pleasant fucking scenario. But I tell you what, I felt pretty triumphant when she pressed record. Interesting thing too. I didn't learn this till after when she stopped recording, but she had asked me a specific thyroid question. And I answered it truthfully, like factually, the way it should be, right? Answered. And I think she thought that that was a trick question for me, or she would have some gotcha moment, like, you talk shit about doctors, but you don't know. And then afterwards, when we got off the recording, she was like, oh my God, that thing you said about that, that's exactly what my friend who's a doctor said. And that's my other friend who's a doctor. And I want to be like, yeah, I don't care if your friends are doctors. Yeah, I know just as much. It's like, whatever, but it was just very funny. Suddenly I'm a horrible person for using the word uninformed doctors. How dare I even say that, even though it's on the cover of my book, of which she wanted to interview me about. What? So anyway, my friend who brought this up to me, they're like, oh, you should interview Janet. I was like, I'm not interviewing Janet ever. I want nothing to do with Janet. By the way, since then, can't tell you how many people have come to me and told me things about Janet or working with Janet or whatever the shit is with Janet. Guess what? Here's another thing. I don't care that Janet has a platform that other people might want to be involved with or be. I don't care. I don't need Janet. I don't want Janet. I don't give a shit about Janet. I'm not kissing ass to Janet's, right? So you need to do that to find your own success, right? Like I could have cowered in the weight of her experience or prominence or you know what I mean? Platform, like her popularity. Instead, it was like, how fucking dare you treat me like that, bitch? No. And you're recording this and like, let's get going. And then never see you again. Have no interest in dealing with you after that. I don't need to know. Yes, it's confirmed and been vindication over the years for a few people to just randomly say these things that they have witnessed about her because I'm like, well, yeah, I witnessed that too. But the more important thing is that I didn't cower in the face of that and that I don't need to kiss ass to anybody that operates like that, regardless of status. And that's when you win. That's when you're not sacrificing your own authenticity. And I have seen other people try to kiss buddy ass with her and like all this kind of stuff. And you're like, okay, but then it usually ends up bad. And you're like, well, why were you trying to hitch yourself to that when you saw some of the behavior? She already showed me who she was. I believed her the first fucking time, guys, right? Isn't that a Maya Angelou quote? When someone shows you who they are or tells you who they are, believe them the first time. So I hope this makes sense to you. Now, if you're like, oh God, I could never adopt this type of attitude, even in a situation that required it, you're likely not going to get into a lot of these. I would argue that if you are struggling with any kind of assertiveness, that situations might come to you because of that. So, for example, it's very rare that I get into these situations, but also I'm not ever emanating a vibe that would it's rare because of who I am, right? The challenge for me is not confidence often, right? That's not my challenge. So I usually I'm not going to get them. But when I do, when they come in, whew, some of them are like this one is probably to me, it's something like, I mean, I can think of other examples in my life, clearly, where I've had to be brutally assertive. But this is one that was weird because it's connected to like the health industry and other authors and people and podcasters. And, you think about reputation and what people say about, I think there still is some element of like, you want people to think fondly of you. And so, you know, the win on me being assertive is that she was left with a great impression of me and she got a great podcast, and so did I. Fantastic. Um, but if I hadn't been assertively aggressive, then it would have been a bad impression. I would have lost out on the time I took out of my fucking day to be on that podcast in the first place, right? Like I scheduled that, right? It was probably months in advance. It was a win-win. I made it a win-win by being assertive. She won. I turned her fucking day around pretty much too, because after that, her mood was a 180. So, if we really look at the situation overall, the only negative about it is that she made a bad impression on me and certainly never going to really deal with this person if I don't have to, right? And but she doesn't know that. And the other side is that it was just an absolute win-win in general, though, for the situation, which is a podcast, an expert and an interviewer. She got an expert, she got a great interview that she would have missed out on if her attitude allowed it. If I had allowed her attitude to allow her to cancel that show. So listen, there's so many ways to do this, but it comes with self-reflection and you got to start to practice. So you can get into my very cheap confidence masterclass, a good 90-minute video that'll just inspire you, ignite these kind of feelings. If you need to go deeper, you can get into my confidence course. It's very inexpensive too. It's 14 hours, really fun, really good. It's not about what I want you to understand is that this should not be about looking for trouble. I don't look for confrontation. This is not about looking for it. Sometimes when people have newfound assertiveness skills, they are kind of looking for places because they're so used to being barreled over that now they're like, oh, watch me now. It's not about seeking out confrontation, but it is about being completely prepared for when it shows up. And I am freaking prepared. Prepared. And let me tell you what, to this day, this is why I tell you these confidence moves in these situations, because this scenario, just relaying this scenario to you, about this situation I had with this podcaster is in and of itself continually refueling my confidence and my self-esteem. I am proud of myself. I'm so proud of how I handled that. I mean, really, I am. I hope you are. I hope you're like, yeah, you did a great fucking job. Damn, wow, fucking show. Yeah, yeah, I feel good to this day about it versus having regrets, versus feeling gross, versus feeling like that was a loss, right? Like, oh, I just give up and go, okay, well, I guess she doesn't want to interview me. See you later. I feel awkward now. Someone's yelling at me. Fuck that. So if you need help to be ready for these moments, and again, I'm not saying you're anticipating them or to live your life fearful of crazy confrontations like this, but it is about all aspects of our life, from professional to personal, even in your health, being an advocate for oneself. So look, I read the audiobook to my book, Confident as Fuck. Maybe that's where you start. That's a fun one. Jump into my inexpensive masterclass, which is actually, I think, cheaper than the book, but that's really fun. That's a 90-minute video, or get into my confidence masterclass. Get on this. If you were repelled by that story in terms of the way that I looked at it, I would argue that you need to look at yourself and how you think about confidence and self-esteem, because you're likely struggling. Now, if you looked at it and were like, yeah, fucking go girl. Yeah, right on, Elle, right? Then you're really primed for it. And you just needs to do a little bit more work and get into it a little bit. Because if that is your initial vibe, like, yeah, then that's kind of who you are inside authentically, and you wish to be the same in terms of having that availability of assertive dominance when you need it, you can build that. And again, it takes time, it's practice, but I tell you what, I'm very proud of myself. And if it weren't for that skill, right, that dominant, assertive brutalness that I delivered, what would have become of that day? It would have been absolute crap. But it was a winner for both of us. And I turned it into one. I hope you see how. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. Reach out to me through the contact form on my website. Check out courses, free master classes, free guides, master classes, courses. I also have a confidence ebook and workbook that's free. Maybe you start there and kind of take a look and do a bit of an internal assessment, see where you're at. I hope that story inspired you, though, to maybe look back at situations that were similar where you didn't assert your dominance. And what would you have said if you could go back in time? It's okay to replay the scenario as if it happened. At least you're replaying it in your head and you're embedding that into your subconscious so that if there is a next time, you're able to pull from that. All right, everyone. Hope you have a great, great week. See you next time. Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this show, I would so appreciate you leaving a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about partner discounts on amazing products, visit ellruss.com/discounts.